Every life has a story, and every story is worth sharing. Your story, my story, and our story speak of victory and defeat, joy and sorrow, resilience and vulnerability. They are not just our story, they are Christ's story in us. They are Kingdom Stories from Down Under.
Every Friday morning at 6 o'clock, a bunch of wonderful guys meet together for prayer in our old church. And in this beautiful circle of men, we started to build some relationships. And we get to know each other as we share our journeys. And we find more and more common ground. And it's so beautiful to hear men talk about what the Lord has done in their lives. One of these beautiful men is Glen Liebold from Zimbabwe originally, but now living in Australia. It is of a bit of a flavor now with South Africa and Zimbabwe guests coming through Kingdom Stories. And tonight we have Glen here. Glen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Natanael.
So Zimbabwe, not South Africa, Rhodesia.
Yes, correct. I was born in Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe.
We teach people a bit of history and the geography.
So north of South Africa is...
North in the east part of South Africa.
Correct, yeah. More so north because east is more Mozambique.
Yeah.
And it's landlocked between Mozambique, Zambia and Botswana and South Africa in the south. So,
yeah.
It's been most
so Zimbabwe is landlocked, is it?
Correct, yeah.
So what's at the ocean, Botswana?
Mozambique is on the eastern side. Zambia is on the northern side.
Yeah.
Botswana on the west.
Okay.
And South Africa in the south.
Nice. And you grew up in Rhodesia?
Yes, grew up in Rhodesia at a beautiful place called Victoria Falls.
Oh, very famous.
Yeah, one of the 7 wonders of the world.
So you live nearby?
Yeah, we lived right near the falls. In the falls, and if the wind was blowing in the right direction, the spray would come onto our house. I remember as a small boy, my mother used to complain about the wet washing. It could never dry because of the moist from the big fall, Victoria Falls. So spent most of my young childhood in Victoria Falls, and then moved into more into the inner areas of the country, namely Gwela and Bulawayo. With my father being moved around during the war times, it was very difficult with the bush war that was on. So ended up moving.
What was he doing?
He was a chartered accountant as well as an ornithologist, so a study of birds.
Oh.
And worked for the railways.
Mm-hmm.
So ended up doing a lot of work on the railways in some of the areas. And like I say, when the war was on, we ended up moving into the farm just outside Bulawayo in Matopus.
You bought a farm?
No, my grandparents were farming there,
okay.
And with my father being away at war, we ended up going to boarding school, but lived on the farm and did all our farming just outside of Bulawayo and a little town called Gwela, now called Gwera.
What were you farming? Or were you
it was mixed farming.
Maize?
So yeah, there was maize was involved, cotton, some table grapes, sheep, small volumes of cattle, and cotton.
Wow. For our listeners, or for our viewers who don't know what maize is, can you explain a little bit of this corn type of, what's the difference between corn and maize?
There's no difference. The Northern Americans will call it corn, and the Africans will call it maize. You get 2 colours, a white and a yellow, and they're utilised for various...
But in Africa, a lot of it is white, isn't it?
Majority of it in Africa would be white, which is the staple food diet of most of Africa, once it's been processed and milled. And then the yellow maize is often utilised for feed, whether it be cattle, chicken, pigs, sheep, and most of it will go into a feeding scenario or into a mixed feed.
So the white one is quite nutritional?
Yes.
Can you buy maize here in Australia?
Yes, we can buy maize in the South African shops, and we still have what they call pap and vors evenings, and so there's still a very big following of maize or of cornmeal.
Nice.
Mealie meal is what it's called.
Do you miss it, or you just have it when you miss it?
Oh, you have it when you're barbecuing or braaiing, as the South Africans like to say.
You have to have it.
You don't have to have it, but it's always good to be part of it. It's just a cultural thing.
Yeah.
Putting it as I do, with whether it be sausages or boerewors, or steak or chops, or whichever. It's just
They're big meat eaters as well. Meat eaters. Meat eaters.
Yeah, again, it's just part of the culture there. Growing up with good beef and good lamb, it's always been part of the culture. Yeah.
So how old were you when you moved to the country?
We left Zimbabwe in the sort of after independence.
No. When you moved to the farm.
To the farm, I was still in primary school and junior school then.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yep.
So was it fun for you to be on a farm?
Absolutely. Yeah. Living on the farm during holidays, but being in boarding school during the school terms.
So that was common, wasn't it?
Very much so. Yeah. With so many of the parents being away and serving in the military or at war. It was a common theme to put your kids in boarding school.
A bit of history lesson here. Who was fighting against whom?
It was the ZANU-PF were looking to take over the white regime of Ian Smith. It's a whole political aspect which we don't need to get into.
And who won?
Without going into too much detail, Mugabe won. Yeah.
And that affected a lot, obviously, the families there.
Correct. Yeah. The war itself had a devastating effect on many families and broke up many families.
And a lot of people escaped. They went south.
Yes, lots of people left Rhodesia or Zimbabwe, and many of the agricultural people that you find in Australia today left at those times as well. The uncertainties that were there. Many folk went to South Africa and rebuilt and restructured there. As I mentioned, many homes, my home included, was devastated by the war and the effects of it. Men turning to alcohol and being on a work regime where 6 weeks on, 3 weeks off, 4 weeks off, created a lot of diversity and just family
imbalance.
Yeah, absolutely. So divorce was one way out. And so my folks got divorced, and my mom thought it would be better for us to move to South Africa to finish up our education. I have
How many of you?
Just my brother and I, and so he's 4 years older than I am. And she decided to pack us up, and we left Zimbabwe and ended up in South Africa.
And your dad stayed behind to fight?
Yes, well, but then the war was over, and the whole political structure sort of sorted itself out, but my folks had split by then, so my dad stayed on. And we went to South Africa, where I finished high school, and my brother finished high school, and then we were enlisted into the South African military.
So it was easy to become a citizen, to get full rights in South Africa?
Yeah, at that stage there was still a white government in charge of South Africa. So we were able to settle and rebuild a life there. And first time I really got exposed to a church organisation or...
So your parents had no knowledge? Or?
No, very little. You have a knowledge, but you don't have that in depth. We weren't effective churchgoers as such, or grew up in a Christian home, or I was christened or sprinkled or whatever you want to call it in the Victoria Falls Hotel. So...
with beer?
Probably. If you go with the alcoholic theme in my family, probably more than likely, yes. That's the first time we got exposed to the church, and through visitation and through evangelism program.
People came to you?
Yeah, so what turned out eventually to be my wife's father, my father-in-law, the Reverend Harold Peasley. They had in their church, because they're Florida Baptist at that stage, had an evangelism program called EE3, and they would go out and minister to different folks. And these folks got chatting to my mom.
So they came to the house,
and she was invited to church, and that led to a follow-up, and she gave her life to Christ.
And you would have been 15, 16 by now?
Probably a little bit older, 17, 18, just finishing high school. And my mom came to know the Lord, and she turned her life around. And as two young boys, we thought this was not really for us, and we continued our ways of being boys. And it was only really later on that when I got into some really difficult situations in the military that I realised that I'd been going to church with my
So you
mom.
finished school and then you were taken into military. Was it compulsory or you chose?
It was conscription, yeah.
How long? Year and a half?
Initially it was 2 years, and they brought it down to 1 year, and then they once the elections took over, they scrapped it completely, and it just became
So
compulsory.
you caught the 2 years.
At the end of the 2 years, yeah. So I served from 92, and then as a reservist and interim up until about 1998 to 2000.
Were you in combat as well?
Yeah, in township combat, yes.
Interesting.
And that's when things, where my story changed on the 22nd of October. I was in a contact, and I'd made a decision that I'd heard a lot about the Lord and all these things. I had a girlfriend that is now my wife, Cheryl, and who you know.
Yeah.
And she, continually spoke to me about the things of the Lord, and it just was one of those things that were in the back of my mind all the time, but it wasn't for me.
Did you meet her before you went to the army? Or
I did, yes. I met her at church.
Ah,
One of the reasons we go to church, Natanael, is to
meet some.
find a good wife.
Hey, it works.
So it worked for me, absolutely.
Worked for me as well.
Yeah, so wonderful spiritual woman, and by far the spiritual saving grace in my life was then my girlfriend, and she saw me through those very difficult times. And when I was able to come to the Lord and pick up a phone and phone her and let her know that I had made a decision to follow Christ, even though it was a decision on the back of, if you get me out of this trouble, God, I'll follow you. I'll stop my drinking and my swearing and my smoking and my nonsense, and I'll follow you. And I made that decision on that night. And praise the Lord, He's been with me through many valleys and over many hills. And I can look back and see that if it wasn't for that change, I don't think I'd be here today.
So she befriended you even though you were in, were you girlfriend, boyfriend, were you dating while you were still in your ways?
Yes, I lived.
That's quite harsh because her being the daughter of such a prominent leader, it didn't really go well with the family and maybe even with the church.
No, it didn't, but we were able to keep it under wraps, so I was able to live a good double standard life at that stage.
But she knew it.
Yes, she knew inside, she knew that.
She could smell it.
And it probably got to the stage, it probably was getting to the stage where it was becoming very difficult for her. And like I said, the Lord's timing was everything.
Yeah.
Finished up in the military, she finished her studies. I was planning on going back to farming. In Zimbabwe, as well as doing a professional hunter's license. I did that in South Africa, and then started to look at developing.
You weren't going to give up the guns after the army?
No. I went into some game ranging experiences where I was assisting anti-poaching guys and training them in firearm utility, because at that stage the poaching within a rhino and elephant was getting a little bit out of hand. So I went and I worked for a number of years in the Sabi Sands Game Reserve as an anti-poaching officer, together with a friend of mine that employed me there. He then went to farming flowers and asked me if I would be keen on coming back to the farming scenario. So I ended up farming flowers for 4 years.
In South Africa?
In South Africa, and Cheryl and I got married in that time.
You had flowers to give her, didn't you?
And yeah, we had flowers for the wedding, so I didn't have to buy flowers for the wedding.
You married in the church? Your father-in-law married you?
Yes, we got married in Florida Baptist Church on the 1st of July, one of the coldest days in South Africa. It was freezing cold. So all the photos.
The Bible says better two than one.
Yes, so yeah, we were very fortunate to have got married on that freezing cold day.
So everyone's shivering in the photos.
Yeah, we couldn't have photos where we wanted to because the gardens had been frosted black, funnily enough. So we've got no photos of our flowers except the internal flowers inside. So yeah. Just one of those real funny, weird setups that we had. Sharon and I got married in 1995, and just at that time, while I was still farming in a little town called Groblersdal, an American cotton company came along and asked me if I'd be keen on assisting them with cotton development, as the new development of cotton and new breeding technologies got underway. South Africa and Southern Africa became a very big counter-season product where they could then run these products 2 ice a year, grow one in the Northern Hemisphere, and then when it's winter in the Northern Hemisphere, it's summer in the South. So I started working with them. Cheryl and I spent a number of months living in America, which was very interesting.
To be trained?
Just being trained and being exposed to a number of different scenarios within the cotton industry. Did that for a number of years. Come 2000, and the Lord blessed us with our first boy, Hunter, and he was born in 2000 after
why Hunter?
We had a friend in America that...
Nothing to do with your hunting?
No, not at all. No, not at all. We used to have very good friends in America, and they had a little boy, Hunter Barfield, and he got severe cancer at a really young age. And we just, sort of in honor of him and just being able to, we enjoyed the name. We thought it was going to be a really nice name for him. His second name is Brian, after my father, who was tragically murdered in 2000 in Zimbabwe on the farm. So we named him Hunter Brian after those friends of ours that had their son, and then after my father.
So your father was murdered on the farm?
In Zimbabwe, yeah.
Just he got invaded by locals?
It was at that time when they were taking farms and making, having examples of people that were involved in farming, and my father was the accountant for a big cattle company, and he was doing valuations on farms which was against the government, etc. So there was a Mugabe-driven
agenda.
So that happened, and things were getting...
Was he on his own?
Yes, he was, on Christmas Eve in 2000, So Hunter was born in 2000, and 2 years later his younger brother Joshua was born. And growing up with those two young boys, we at a certain age we realized that we need to give these two young boys a different upbringing than what I had. And in order for me to be a better father than what I had experienced, was for me to just give them a life where they have got a free choice. And we're not going to get into the political side of things, Natanael, but it got very difficult at that stage for young, and even for older white guys to manage and to live. And I'm sure lots of your listeners can attain to that. So we came to the Lord, and we said to the Lord that we would really feel, if it's in the Lord's will that we move, that He opened the doors. And again, I got very brave in front of the Lord, and I said to the Lord, I would like to lay a fleece down before you. In actual fact, I'd like to lay 2 fleeces down before you. And they were, number one, that we moved to Australia. I'd been very privileged to travel the world with my agricultural company, who I'd worked for up until that stage for about 12 years. So my fleece was that we come to Australia, first and foremost. And secondly, that the company that I go with, I stay with that company.
Wow.
And they pay for everything. So, within 7 days of each other, the 2 emails came through. And
so you applied for a job in agriculture, or fertilizing?
No, not at all. We just said to the Lord that those are our fleeces.
Yes.
And the company I worked for sent me an email saying, would you like to go and work in Australia for us, and we will pay for everything. So I said, absolutely. You couldn't get a clearer answer, as Gideon did. So we packed up, and we immigrated to New South Wales. And started a position there in New South Wales, on the edge of the outback, in a little town called Narrabeen.
That's where they were cropping cotton.
So that's where the head office was for our cotton company, cotton business within South Africa. Within Australia. And just under 1 year later, they shut up shop and sacked almost 80% of the people, and literally just brought everything to a complete stop. And with that, they wouldn't release our visas. So we bought a house, we bought a car, put the boys in school, and
heavily mortgaged already.
And when you're moving, immigrating,
the dollars, no.
You need to do the exchange.
The rand doesn't buy you many dollars.
The rand was at that stage about 9 or 10 to 1. So it was very difficult. And more than that, Natanael, was the wrestling that I ended up with the Lord. You know, I had these Bible verses where the Lord had clearly stated to us, you know, He would send us into a land where they draw, you know, iron from, in Leviticus, where they draw iron from the mountains, and it's, you know, land of milk and honey, and where farming is, and that was what my life was about. And, a year later we packed up and we immigrated back to South Africa.
You had to go back?
Yeah, they wouldn't release our visas, so we packed up and went back again and moved into the same house that we weren't able to sell. And Cheryl went back to the same class, and the boys went back to it was like they'd been in a 1 year holiday. But inside I was just shattered, you know. And so I wrestled with the Lord for a long time as to why. He asked so many questions. 2.5 years later, I get this an email from, you know, a chap that ended up being a very, very good close friend of mine, working for a large seed company, saying, we've got a seed company that we've just purchased up in far north Queensland, in an area called Mariba, which is, you know, 80 kilometres west of Cairns on the Great Barrier Reef. So all of a sudden my ears pick up.
Hunting fish.
I love fishing and I love hunting. So, and we committed to the Lord. And again, we laid a fleece out to the Lord and said, Lord, you need to help us in answering this. This is for real now. We're not doing this again. And 2.5 years later, we received a visa within 5 days, which was a miracle. And I needed one document, and that's a modern day miracle in that how my handwritten birth certificate of my father was found in a box of real estate goods in the middle of Harare and was sent to me. It was unbelievable. So the Lord answered our prayers in many, many ways.
Wow.
And got to immigrate to Australia. So we immigrated 3 times in 3 years. And settled in far north Queensland and started a new job in developing the whole tropical north. And the Lord blessed us. And
selling seed?
Yes. Focusing primarily on tropical grasses and tropical legumes, developing this business for this big corporation that had employed me and that had brought me over. Again, we were blessed with the way that the business grew. I had a wonderful team that I was fortunate to manage, and it was nothing that I had done. It was through that team and through that work, and being a witness to those folk that don't often get to see people. You know, I believe that relationships are where it's all built, where things take place, and building those relationships over a number of 7 or 8 years for this company put me in good stand. And I was able to stand firm on my beliefs, on my values, on my morals that the Lord had installed into my life, and share that with everybody. You know? And in a corporate world, that's often very frowned upon, and not looked upon as being honest and trustworthy. But I stood my ground, and I was there. We were there for just on 7 years. The boys really flourished, both in school and in sport. They're both very accomplished rugby players, and really, really did well.
Well, Queensland's big on.
Both of them for Queensland. They were selected for the younger Queensland Red team, and they did very, very well. And did that for just on 7 years, and we became Australian citizens. So we went through our ceremony, and we got the famous blue passport where we were able to just look back and see where the Lord had brought us and how far He brought us. And we still often ask, why did we have to go back? And what are the lessons that we've learned out of that? And where do we put our, as soon as we put our faith in man and in this world, it's inevitable it will let us down. And things changed in the work scenario, and I was contemplating leaving and going on my own, but that didn't seem to be right at the time. So a position opened up in Western Australia where they said, well, you've done really well in North Queensland, why don't you go to Western Australia
to do
the same there for us. So spoke to Cheryl, and Cheryl's sisters lived in Perth for most of her life, so it was like, that's good. And I was on the verge of burnout. I just committed my whole time to this company, driving into this company, developing the relationships that I had, which made it very successful. And so we came to Perth just on, I think it's almost 3 years ago now, 3.5 years ago, and started into a new a new venture here and built from scratch.
Yeah.
It just didn't have the business acumen that we were looking for. Initially, that was thoughts within the revegetation and the rehabilitation within the mines. And Western Australia is a very, very difficult state to grow things in.
Yeah.
Especially once you get into them.
And then you've got the wet months.
Well, it's
the other way
extremes. It's either extremely wet or it's extremely dry and extremely hot.
Hot and extremely cold sometimes.
And also there's a lot of factors to it. The climatic conditions. You know, if everything was like the southwest corner, it would be great. It's wet, it's cold, it's moist. They've got good soils.
Predict it.
You get up into the Kimberleys and the Pilbara where it's a harsh country. It's 40 degrees. It's red dirt. There's no moisture. There's nothing grows there.
Yeah.
So we were missing.
And then you get floods.
Yeah, and then you get 400 mils or 600 mils in a week, or it's 45 degrees for 15 days. So it was a little bit misleading in terms of where we thought we would be able to develop and grow this business. So after 3 years, I still had the connections and the relationships that I built over 7 or 8 years across the entire northern WA and Northern Territory. And these kept coming back to me and saying, we need help.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, just about a year ago, I felt the calling that the Lord was giving me an opportunity to branch out on my own. And
that's a big step.
It was a very big step, very big indeed. So I consulted a number of Christian mentors that I have, and I've spoken to a number of people, and a number of opportunities had come up. And had gone away, and new one had risen up, and I thought, okay, Lord, this is where you're taking me, and then that door would close, and so I had these various discussions with different ones, and at the end of it all, I just decided that I feel that the Lord's given me the talents and the gifts that He has given me, and I feel often my mission field is to people that don't get to get to church or get to see people. In the olden days, Natanael, I'm sure your dad would have been one of those who were driving around visiting all the farmers, or on a horseback or on a cart or whatever it might be.
Bike,
motorbike, whatever it can be.
Push bike.
In Australia, the demographics and the geography just makes it so difficult for lots and lots of these folks to get to a church or to get to a prayer meeting during the week. So I feel the Lord has given me and blessed me with some of that talent that I can get to these guys, and I can get onto their farms, I can get onto their stations, and I can be a mission. That's my mission field.
Hallelujah, that's your pulpit.
It's a very big responsibility, as I shared with you the other morning.
And they can be tough as well. You're on their turf.
Very much so. When you're meeting somebody on their ground, you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
But again, I believe it's what the Lord has put in my life, and the experiences that He's taken me through, and the development that He has taken me, is I can come to these guys as I am. There's no false pretenses, and the Lord's blessed my business. The first year out, it was just
thriving,
unbelievable to see where most people would say, nah, for the first year out,
it's impossible.
It's just not done. These things don't happen, and it was one of the worst years in terms of agriculture. Very dry in certain areas, lots of fires, then floods. And just recently, we've had some really hard times in terms of wet areas, and crops are damaged, and you can't get into paddocks because it is too wet.
Cyclone weather.
Cyclone, heavy rainfalls. As we talk, there's tremendous floods on the east coast. In Queensland and New South Wales, folks are in all sorts of dilemma and trouble there, and so again, just added to all of this was COVID. And we live in Western Australia.
And now the war. What else?
And so travel has just been a non-go. And for me, being able to get out to these folk that's where I find the best. While I'm doing business with them, I'm also just being able to be with them and give them that moral support and that upliftment of somebody that can come out of their norm, and being able to just share with them and being an ear to hear. They go through such extremes on the farms here and on the big stations that they just want somebody to talk to. That's not their neighbour, because the neighbour's going through very similar
the same things,
challenges that they face. So I feel that sometimes I'm I'm humbled by the way that the Lord uses us.
Opens the doors.
And opens doors and puts
So you go north as well, or mainly east?
Yes, now I travel mainly into the northern parts of WA, so
Okay.
into Broome and Kununurra and the Kimberleys and
Whoa.
Pilbara, and then across most of the Northern Territory.
So you drive?
And I'll fly. I used to fly to there. We will be able to fly now in a couple of days' time, but now primarily I fly. The distances are too far.
Yeah.
You know, from where I live up now to where we are there, it'll be a good 24 to 26 hour drive.
Yeah.
It's a 4 hour flight. And even when you get there, you're still driving 3 or 4, 5, 6 hours to get to
one farm.
to get to somewhere. You know, some of these blokes will live 120, 150 kilometers
So
off the main road.
do you hire a camper, or how do you travel?
I generally just get a rental vehicle, quite a substantial vehicle, because you come across all sorts of things on the roads.
Yeah.
And the road conditions. So I'll do that, and then I'll make sure that I get into smaller towns, and I will stay and overstay either with farmer. If it's that far, I'll stay with farmers or friends, and then otherwise just stay in the small little towns. That's
A little motel, or
yeah, just have a little motel room, and then you can go 200 or 300 kilometre trips either way around and out of the little hub that you've got.
Yeah.
So most of the guys I do.
So what seeds do you sell?
Majority of them are all tropical grasses and tropical legumes.
So tropical grasses such as?
So you'll have rose grasses, your panics. It's probably foreign to you in terms of what you do and what you do. But majority of the grasses that we put in will be for pasture renewal, pasture rejuvenation.
Yeah.
Lots of the pastures will be for hay production.
Yeah.
So the farmer will actually plant a field of grass and then mow
turn
it into hay bales.
Yeah.
And then that they use to feed their cattle, or they sell it on to drier areas that might not necessarily have that. And the legumes will be a very similar process. They'll either go into paddocks to supplement the nitrogen fixation to feed the grasses. Some of them also make very good hay, high values of protein in them. So again, it's a system that we work on and we work with.
So it's mainly for breeding for animals.
Yeah, it's all goes into cattle feed. Yeah, or just putting cattle into a field that's got fresh legumes and grasses. So when you have got a dry period, you've got fields that can carry those cattle, and that can then be subsistence on those paddocks, that they're not overgrazing the native grasses or their paddocks.
And you're selling the seed?
Yes, I sell that seed, and then the service that goes with it in terms of agronomy. Everything that goes with it.
Fertilizers and...
No, I don't do the fertilizers. I work very closely with a lot of the resellers.
Sure.
So all the agriculture resellers, who then in turn will sell fertilizers, chemicals, insecticides, herbicides, wires, tags, whatever general farming needs are. So I just slot into them and so the farmer can go to a one-stop shop, and he can pick up his cattle dips and his blocks, and also pick up his seed at the same time.
Wonderful. And this gives you a massive opportunity to come close to them. Do they open up?
Some do, some do, some don't, depending on the circumstances they find themselves in. Australian farmers are tough blokes.
Yeah, well, they have to be.
They have to be to survive and to be on the country.
Are they mainly with family members, or?
Yep, lots of them are in their families, and their families are part of the business. I think it's a difficult scenario at the moment where the youngsters don't want to farm. They see the struggles and they see the challenges that are facing Australian farmers in terms of just climatic conditions, droughts, 4, 5, 6 years
long
of droughts, long hours.
I mean, it's massive plots and a lot of work and a lot of money wasted. Well, if there's no crops.
The input costs are tremendous. We don't have the volume of labour that we should have, and now with COVID, even it's just made it so much worse. We don't have backpackers. We don't have this transition labour that will come through and to use as header drivers or tractor drivers or chaser bin drivers. So the families have had to step up more and more and more, and you're finding
and automate more as well.
But that costs money. To automate big machinery on the volume and the scales that they're farming, it costs a lot of money. And with the effect that the droughts have had, or the floods or the fires have had, there isn't that capital to put into automation. So you're finding, children and wives are driving trucks and driving tractors and on the horses road, and more People are getting involved, the family is getting involved.
Have you led somebody to the Lord?
Not outright, no, but that seed's been planted.
Of course,
And,
a seed.
yeah, so Living Seeds is the name of my little company, and that, to me, that's what it's about. It's just being able to get to those folk and being able to talk to them on their level and being able to have that honest discussion about agriculture.
Have you got any particular testimony where a massive turnaround has happened, or he or she acknowledged that your visit there has had an impact on them?
Not one in specific, Natanael. I think there's been a few where folk have, and I've been able to share testimony with them, or being able to share a relationship, an experience that I've had where the Lord's taken me through something, and that just builds confidence into them that there is something out there, and there's someone out there, and there is a bigger power than ourselves. And as soon as we put our faith in man, it's you will get ridiculed because you're the odd one out, and that's just part of it. You've got to wear that. So, and if it's my role to sow that seed and someone else to water it and harvest it, then so be it. I do what my calling is, and that's where I feel the Lord has taken me down.
It's a beautiful ministry and a beautiful job. But that means you are away from the family quite a bit.
Yes, I am. Unfortunately, the distances are very far, and the time well spent. It's been good with COVID. You can spend time with family, but you can't farm with a telephone or over Zoom, or so it's difficult to build relationships when you're on a telephone. Whereas if you're in a tractor or on a header, you're harvesting a crop.
The last thing you want is a salesman calling you.
Exactly right. So when you're sitting next to him on the header for 2 or 3 hours, you've got an opportunity to share with him, and he can share with you and share whatever is on his heart and what's on his mind.
So you go up with them in the tractors and stuff?
Yeah, I spend as much time on the farm and doing farm work with them, because that's where you're going to, that's as the saying goes, that's where the rubber meets the road, and you talk to a chap loading a road track.
And the road is the mud.
Yeah, well, you're talking to a chap that's loading a road train, or
and they welcome you. They welcome you in their own home as well. You can stay with some of them on their station.
I do. Yeah,
that's nice.
That's just the people of farm. That's farmers in general.
Yeah,
and people of the land in general that have that welcoming. Maybe it's because they don't see too many people, and everybody that does come just wants to sell them the latest and the greatest. Or
still, there's an element of trust.
Absolutely. They'll put you on $1 million machine and ask you to drive it, or $500,000 or $600,000 tractor and ask you to do 3 hours work. So there's a lot of trust there, and that comes from building that relationship over those years with one, and keeping that honesty and keeping that integrity that you have, and that you're building that relationship with those guys, and that you're not there to make a sale. No. You're not there to take their money from them. It helps if they do buy from you, but that's not the core reason you're going there. You're going to build a relationship and to supply them a service on the side of seeds. And
when you're back in town, looking after the family, ministry, church, men's?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, we have our Friday morning Bible prayer meeting, and so I've been involved with that ever since I've come to Western Australia.
Yes.
And get involved wherever we can. We were involved with some of the young people and the children there. Now they've grown up and they've sort of left that young people's groups. But involved in the men's ministry where possible, and wherever one can serve and be used by the Lord. And that's sort of what my take of it is.
And your boys?
2 boys, as I mentioned. Hunter is now 21, just 22 in June. And Joshua is 19, he'll be turning 20 in May. Both love the Lord and both follow the Lord. We've been really privileged in that Cheryl's dad, Harold, has been able to baptize both of them.
Wow.
And by confession of their own testimony, nothing.
Back in South Africa? He came here?
We were on holiday in South Africa when Hunter decided to get baptized, when Cheryl's dad was still there. And then when we came to Western Australia, Harold came out and with the family, and Joshua decided at that stage that he would. He was already talking baptism.
Yes.
I think he was 17.
Was it in the ocean or in the pool?
No, it was in our pool in our home. Yeah, so it was and just being able to be baptized by your grandfather is an amazing.
Precious.
And they've got a tight bond between them and their grandfather and so the Hunter's moved out of home. He lives in Geraldton.
Okay.
And he manages,
with work?
Yeah, with work. He's a Telstra manager
Mm-hmm.
up in Geraldton. And the Lord's looked after him and blessed him. And he's a go-getter. And,
Beautiful.
Yeah,
What is that?
Oh, I don't know, but it's probably, I don't know where he gets it from, but and Joshua is, he's just working at the moment. He's applied for the Navy and been accepted for the Navy, so he'll be going to the Navy shortly.
Military.
So he's
Makes
pretty
you proud, doesn't it?
They make me proud no matter what they do,
Yeah.
Daniel. You know, the fact that we are blessed that, number one, they follow and serve the Lord.
Of course.
And that's their drive in their life. Is
Yeah.
that they've got, and I hope that as a father and as a mother, you know, that Cheryl and I can only take them so far and lead them so far, and commit them to the Lord. You know, we commit their spouses whenever that will be, and whoever the Lord chooses to put them together with somebody, and we commit them into the Lord's hands. You know, and
Nice.
He blessed them. He blessed us with those two boys, and we're very honoured to be the parents of those two boys.
Beautiful. Next, legacy. What are you building? What are you hoping to leave behind for them and for others, generations that follow, if the Lord keeps this planet going?
Yeah, who knows what's going to happen. I think for us as parents, the best legacy we can leave is to have your born again children, so that you know you'll take them with you.
Yeah.
We can't take anything in this world with us.
That's right.
So that, you know, if we're going to leave an inheritance or a legacy, it needs to be one of spiritual connotations, that we've given them the right foundings and the right foundations,
Yes.
so that their lives can then reflect that.
Mm.
To leave them, you know, material goods or financial goods is neither here nor there, because we can't take that with it.
Yeah.
So that for us is to ensure that we've grounded them in the foundations of the Word, and we believe we have. That's for us is the main thing, and then just continue to serve the Lord where He's put us. You know, Cheryl's in a school where she feels the Lord has placed her there, and that's her mission field. She's got a great ministry.
She teaches?
She teaches, yeah.
Beautiful.
So she's got a wonderful ministry amongst those teachers, where she teaches and feels the challenges of the Lord's on her life often. And as do I, you know, my life, committed to the Lord, and where He leads me, that's where we will follow. And if He continues to bless and to grow living seeds, then, you know.
Well, first of all, you're a living seed, and you want to plant living seeds everywhere. And I think that's the most important aspect, isn't it?
I think so. That's what we try and strive to become more Christ-like, you know, more of Him and less of me.
So easy.
Is what we do, and He's given us the gifts and the talents and the abilities to be able to share with what we know. The talents that He's given us each different.
So all these challenges in life, what have they done in you?
They've worn me out. While we look at them as they will weaken us.
Yes.
But we know the scriptures say where we are weak, He is strong.
Yeah.
And so we go through those times where you will question the Lord and you will wrestle with the Lord, and you'll ask questions, you know, why did this happen? Why did that happen? We recently lost my mom to COVID back in South Africa.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it was, you know, we were able to protect her for so long.
Yeah.
And she needed an operation, a knee operation, and they wouldn't operate on her until she was, you know, she proved that she was negative for COVID. And 4 days later, she tested positive, so she picked up COVID in the hospital.
While she was waiting for the surgery.
Yeah, well, she just thought she had surgery, so she passed away within 2 weeks of that. So it was just challenging times, you know, to be sort of,
You couldn't even go there.
you know, 50 and not having that opportunity to, you know, to share. You know, I know that she knew the Lord and she loved the Lord and she's with the Lord. So that's the peace that I have.
Yes.
Unfortunately, my older brother doesn't know the Lord. The spirit of alcohol has grabbed hold of his life, and it's made such a impact on his life. So we continue to raise him up in front of the Lord and pray. And we know that my mom had a ministry to him in that, and he was there to be able to see her go and to run and manage the funeral. So we're hoping and trusting that through that process the Lord can work through him. But those are the scenarios that you go through, Natanael. Then that's what strengthens you.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you look back and you see those milestones where the Lord has brought you through, and you look into the valley and you know that you've just come over the top of a hill. And that's the strength that you draw from. And that's when you go through all these difficult times in one's life, and by no means am I complaining that we have got difficult lives. If you think of people around the world at the moment,
yes,
we are blessed where we are. We can only be thankful and grateful for Christ's mercy and His grace. There are so many that are facing daily challenges that we know nothing about.
That's right.
And so just being grateful for what we have, ensuring that we keep our eyes on Jesus. Harold's got a book, Keeping the Main Thing. It's about evangelism. Yeah. And that's what it's all about, is living our lives for Christ.
It's beautiful.
Greater is He that is in me than He that is in the world. So
that's right.
What challenges really can they throw at us? Yes, they come to us on a daily basis, and we try and defend them and we fight them off. But at the end of the day,
it's Christ who fights for us.
We've got to just give it to the Lord and say, we focus on those things and keep our eyes on Him. And it's not easy, make no mistake. It sounds easy sitting here from a nice, comfortable chair. And
retrospective gets it a little bit easier, but when you're in the middle of it, it's not pleasant.
It's definitely not pleasant going through those. Like anything with the storm, that saying is you need to endure the storm to appreciate the rainbows.
That's right. And
we go through storms in life, and it's those storms that, when you look back, is what made us stronger.
That's right.
And through the Holy Spirit just guiding us, leading us, giving us that confidence that all things that work for good for Him.
Wonderful.
So
thanks for sharing this, and obviously your story. I'm sure our viewers appreciate this immensely. Well, what a life. How many challenges, and people do get on top of it because God is always there for them. And as Glenn shared, he's put God to the test a few times, and God has shown up every time. And now he's planting living seeds everywhere he goes. He's just dropping bits and bits of Christ in every sphere, helping the farmers out there and also the people that he meets down here. And also with his family, with his wife, in her circle of influence, the boys in the shops, soon in the Navy, just planting and sowing seed. It is beautiful. I pray that this encourages you to also plant seed wherever God has planted you for the time being, and you will see a harvest, a bountiful harvest in the future. It takes time, it's agricultural work, and just rely on God to do His part, but be responsible with what you have to do as well. Thank you for watching and being with us on this journey of Kingdom Stories from Down Under, and we hope to see you next time in a week. Lord bless you.
Thank you for joining us on Kingdom Stories from Down Under. We'd love it if you would subscribe, rate, and share these stories with your wider community. And remember, every story is worth sharing, including yours.